Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Live with Liz. Happy Wednesday, like I always say. I'm out of breath. I just realized the Roomba was on behind me and it was making a super loud noise, so I had to go turn it off. But anyway, I know a lot of you are into this week, so maybe you're not watching, and that's okay. Watch me later. If you're watching me later, hi, everybody. Usually we talk a lot about getting leads and following potential new clients, trying to identify them, trying to convert them. Today we're talking about keeping your clients. This is absolutely crucial to your business. Keeping your clients is the best way to get new clients, actually. It's the easiest and most affordable way to get new clients. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. Your quality of service is probably the number one thing you need to focus on. And there are a lot of excuses I get for mediocrity. People are satisfied with satisfied. And that's not good enough. You don't want to just be satisfied. You don't want people to just come back because, it's just easy to come back. You want to dazzle and delight your clients. And you want your clients to shout from the rooftops how wonderful your service is, to tell their neighbors and their friends, and to talk about it until the cows come home because they are that impressed with you. Even better is if they go to Google and write a review for you with 5 stars and give you a testimonial you can use on your website. How awesome is that? So really, keeping these clients and making them happy should be your number one priority. Doing that will help your business grow much faster than any other tactic you take. So what do you have to do? There are some general things that I think everybody knows when it comes to delighting your clients. There are things like having good communication, making sure all of your staff is trained to communicate well, being consistent, making sure that you're successful as much as you can be. In law, there are a lot of ups and downs, and you can't promise 100% success rates, but I guess there are a few people out there who probably can. But this is what you have to do to delight your client, is to talk to them, listen to what they have to say, be aware of what they need. Hey, Rachel, it's nice to see you. And then find a way to delight them. Sometimes that means even adding a personal touch to your services, but above and beyond anything else is that consistent communication and giving them what they need to be able to save time, to be able to predict outcomes, to be able to be successful in their own roles. And there are a couple of anecdotes I want to give to you today. So one of them has to do with this communication, this idea of responding to your clients. Of course, you want to respond promptly. If you have a policy in place, there are some firms that say, we'll always respond to you within 24, 48 hours. There are some firms that say, we just don't have the resources to do it. You'll figure it out, even if it's just having an acknowledgement first and then following up with the substantive responses. That's always fine. But there are some things that have happened in my career that have always led me to instructing other people in ways to communicate more effectively. When I was in-house, hiring outside counsel, you sit and you have your own expectations based on your own experience and your cultural realities that maybe have a disconnect with whom you're hiring and who's providing services to you. And this comes out a lot in international law. It comes out a lot in intellectual property. So basically, I will send instructions to foreign counsel and I say, do this for me. And foreign counsel will come back with an answer that is long-winded, maybe flowery response, giving me a lot of superfluous information that I just don't need. It's completely irrelevant. It has nothing to do with what I asked. And they've given me this long response and they're charging me for their time. And then I really just have to follow up and ask that question again. And I've had other attorneys, I've had people tell me that they've had these other problems where they ask counsel questions over and over again, but they're not getting a response to their question. So when you're communicating, and you have to pay a lot of attention to what's actually being asked and respond directly to it, especially for the American client. So if they ask a question and it's a yes or no answer, you start with yes or no, and then you can get into the explanation why. If it's not yes or no, be sure that in your explanation, you're addressing the exact question that was asked of you. There recently was a conversation on social media between attorneys about whether or not it was okay to provide a chance of success, a percentage, a chance of success for a particular matter. Like you're 70% likely to succeed, you're 40% likely to succeed. Maybe it's not worth it. This has a minimal chance. And a lot of attorneys were expressing their doubts about whether or not they should do this ethically, whether they were comfortable with giving a percentage. And many of them just said, I just flat out won't do it. It's not right. I can't guarantee any particular outcome. Well, your client's not expecting you to guarantee that particular outcome. Your client is expecting you to make an educated guess. A legal opinion is what they're after. And they want you to use your best judgment and your experience to formulate that kind of a response. Sometimes it's just even a paralegal filling out a form. But the point is, when they ask you for something, you should be willing to give it to them based on, again, your experience and the ability you have to respond to that. They could make an educated guess themselves, but they want yours, right? And you shouldn't be afraid to make that. Now, going back to this communication and asking these questions and not getting these answers. So I will give you an example of this to be able to improve how you respond and truly delight your clients. I have this background in intellectual property, so this example is related to trademarks. And there are times when I would send outside counsel an instruction and say, please file this, knowing that there was a potential conflict in their jurisdiction. So saying, I know that there is another company out there who might block my rights or what I believe are my rights. And maybe there's another company out there that has superior rights to me. But you know what? In other markets, we have a coexistence agreement. So I'm just going to tell counsel, look, I know that this conflict might arise, but we already have a resolution for it. Here's my coexistence agreement. And counsel writes back and says, well, we don't have coexistence agreements in our country, so sorry, we can't file this for you. Buenos días, Evangelina, muy bien verte hoy. So when you send this response and it says, well, sorry, we can't do that. That's useful. Thank you for letting me know that you can't do that. I don't hold it against you, counsel, that your jurisdiction doesn't allow that, but that's mediocre service. You are not helping me. You are not attempting to solve my problem. You are simply giving me one piece of information that is not very useful. Okay, so you can't file a coexistence agreement. There is almost always, and it doesn't have to be just about this kind of conflict, there's almost always something you can do. Now, that something might not be what the client wants to do, but they have options. What are these options? Well, maybe you could lobby someone. Maybe you could defend against the conflict. You can file a response to the office action. You can think outside the box and maybe go into business with the person with superior rights. So there's always something that you can come up with to give them a better response than, nope, can't do it. Well, when you give me those options, I'm thinking, I'm glad I hired you. I'm so grateful for your service. I'm so glad you thought of that. Let's figure out which step we have to take to be able to get into business in this country, or in this place, or in this state, or in this city, or in this market. You can go even further than that, though. So instead of just giving, these ideas of what to do, you will delight me even more if you anticipate my questions. Now, I know you might not be a mind reader, but there are some things that the client needs to know, especially US-based clients, especially corporate clients. What does a client always need to know? How long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost. These are the most important things. So if you give me 3 alternatives to what I've asked for, then at the same time, you very clearly tell me this is approximately how long these options will take, and this is approximately how much these options would cost. You have delighted me. I now have something to consider, a path forward, potential solutions. Even if they don't work, you've at least given me something to hang on to that I can say, okay, you know what you're doing. I know that what I originally asked for might not work, but you've given me this. You've added value to this situation, and I'm glad that you're my counsel. This is what you want your clients to take home. So now, this is just one example of how to be fulfilling when it comes to your client expectations. There are a lot of other things you can do. It starts with your intake and your onboarding. Make sure that your processes are easy to understand. Make sure that you're spending time really knowing what your client needs are. And then, of course, you always hear me say, measure, measure, measure. So if you're losing clients, find out why. These are uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes in my past with different law firms, I've actually enjoyed making these calls and saying, you used to work with this law firm a year or two ago and you recently departed. I just wanted to reach out and see if there was something that we could have done better and see if there is something. Sometimes it's, oh, well, we got acquired. We had to go with the other guys. But sometimes it's, well, you were charging too much money for what we needed to have done, so we had to go with a more affordable option. And you never even knew. So take the time to dive into what the client really needs and see if it is something that you can offer. And if there's something you can change to make that a reality, do it. If you have the ability and the resources to put into something a little more robust, like maybe doing those surveys every year and doing like client satisfaction, that's one thing you could do. Those are hit or miss because a lot of people don't respond to them or get too many of them in a year to respond, but there are different ways that you can go about trying to get that engagement with your client and figure out what to do. That personal touch I was talking about, just being cognizant of your client's industry, making sure that the information you're sharing with them is relevant to who they are and what they're doing. These little things go a very long way when it comes to delighting your client. If you've got a life sciences client, they're not interested in the automotive industry. But if you've got some relevant information related to their industry in your jurisdiction, or if you've got an interesting case that came up that is something that's important to something that maybe they have pending, share it. And then you've delighted them and you said, oh, wow, this is amazing. If you are able to communicate with them in a consistent basis with something valuable, they'll hold on to that. And it's when you're delivering that client service on a regular basis where you're not just that mediocre, sorry, we can't do it counsel, you will be able to hang on to them more. And then you have these other opportunities, like this INTA opportunity now. You see a lot of corporates. I think people are on the corporate side maybe a little sad that this travel looks like maybe it won't be as frequent as it once was, even in a post-COVID world. So how do you give them that little personal touch where you might have met with them and given them a gift or something? Send them a gift card, make a phone call, reach out, stay in touch, and just be relevant to them. That's how you do it. And as long as you don't screw things up too much. As I said, you cannot guarantee success every time that you have a matter, but as long as you're on top of it, as long as you're communicating it properly, that won't matter as much. Now, another big one is price, because the things that matter most to your client are right quality of service and price. So you don't have to be the cheapest, and a lot of times you think you might have to be. And even with some of the commoditized services, they're looking for sometimes, okay, we'll just go with the cheapest option out there. If you have a way to blend your quality of service and your pricing structure so that you're giving the best you absolutely can for the most reasonable amount of money, then you will delight the client. And this is something that Firm Forward can help you do and figure out what you need to be doing in terms of that quality of service and in terms of pricing. So evaluate what you're offering. Make sure that you're analyzing the competitive landscape. Make sure that you're knowing what your client needs are and responding to them adequately. And be direct about what it is they're looking for when you respond to them. This is super important. I think you're not going to be able to guess every single situation what they need. And sometimes they're going to ask you questions that might not make sense. I even had one ask me, for example, why do I have to go through this? What they're asking for, they want to do this assignment. It doesn't make any sense. Well, they have reasons sometimes that you don't understand because you don't have the full picture. Maybe they're in the middle of negotiations for some sort of acquisition that you don't have any idea about, and they're doing some due diligence. And maybe they have a conflict in another place that is resolved by fixing a form in your country. But you can talk to your clients and figure that out and ask what they need so that you're able to respond the absolute best way that you can. And so that they are so happy with whatever it is you're doing that they instantly go online and say, You are amazing. I will hire you every time. And by the way, I'm calling Chambers and telling all about you. So if you have any questions about keeping your clients and about keeping them happy, or about the quality of your service or your communications with your clients, we are happy to help you with those things. Just reach out anytime. And join us. We're here every Wednesday almost for Live with Liz, and we can't wait to see you next week. Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.